Hello again, everybody. This is Ed with another episode of Call Me Mr. Broadstreet. So this week we're reviewing the George Harrison album, 33 and a Third, released in 1976. I know sadly with current world events and, of course, all sorts of other past tragic events, I know that we could certainly use more of George's wisdom. He is definitely sorely missed. I know as I'm taping this, we just passed what would have been his 79th birthday on either February 24th or 25th of this year. So we miss you, George. Just wanted to get that out there. And so we're going to go into the album itself, a little bit of a overview of the album. As I said, it was released in 1976, released on both the US and the UK November 19th of 1976. The US, it charted at number 11, and in the UK it charted at number 35. In the US, the album went gold, so it did pretty well. It was a modest hit, as far as albums go. And I'm going to go ahead and go with track by track, kind of my thoughts as I was re-listening to the album. I hadn't really pulled out this album in a while. It'd been a good minute, as the kids might say, since I listened to it. So the first track is Woman, Don't You Cry For Me. It's definitely a funky bass track to it. This almost sounds like a 70s theme song, kind of in the best way. I mean that in the best way possible. George is in really good voice on this track. Really, this would have been a great track for a tour if George had done like a 1977 tour behind this album. It just rambles along nicely. It's a very upbeat track to kind of start the album. Really one of only two upbeat songs, and I'll get to that second song obviously later in the review. So just kind of, as I'm going through the album here. Dear One is the second track. It's got very much a nice organ intro to it, kind of an organ or synth intro. This almost feels like an Abbey Road era track to me. That's kind of the feeling I got when I was re-listening to it. It's kind of a very whirling quality to the track. Not quite psychedelic, but definitely kind of that feeling to the track. According to the liner notes, which you will have seen in the photos, it was written in the Virgin Islands by George shortly before he worked on this album. So just a very, very nice track, good follow-up track. Track number 3, Beautiful Girl. This was originally written for Doris Troy in 1969. Basically, George helped Doris Troy on her 1970 album. I'm going to get to that in a later review. That's kind of a side project that he helped with very early in 1970. Very underrated album in my view, that one. George obviously reworked the lyrics for Olivia later to become Olivia Harrison, obviously. Self-explanatory, really pleasant track. Some really wonderful George slide guitar here, basically his trademark sound in this track. So obviously the song being about Olivia. Track number 4, one of the very entertaining tracks and definitely a highlight of the album, this song. Now there's a little bit of backstory to this one. It's born out of the 1970 song My Sweet Lord. Basically, the short version, as I understand it, is George ended up getting sued for the song for subconsciously plagiarizing a song called Oh Happy Day. That was recorded. I forget the name of the group right now. I'm honestly blanking on it. I should have done a little more research on it, to be quite honest. The Chiffons, I think is the name of the group. Folks out there can, feel free to correct me in the comments. But basically, long story short, the judge ruled against George and said, okay, you know what? You've got to pay, for subconsciously plagiarizing the song. You've got to pay money and royalties to, I guess, the publisher, or the songwriters in this case. So this song is the result of that. This is kind of George's very wry sense of humor commenting on the situation. There's great saxophone throughout the track. It's almost like an SNL sound, kind of, for that very mid-70s Saturday Night Live, which will also come up later in the review. The video is also very nice. If you get to see the video, this is probably kind of a well-known video among fans. It's basically taking place in a courtroom, and I will get to that in my later review for the George Harrison video collection at some point. 1976 to 1989 for the Dark Horse years. Nope, sorry. That's the second greatest hits collection, but there is the Dark Horse Years DVD as well. Eric Idle kind of provides some guest vocals, as it were, just kind of, shouting a few nonsense phrases, what the song sounds like. It was released on November 15th, 1976 as a single in the US and made it to number 25 on the charts, so kind of a modest hit. But just a really great, driving, entertaining song. Highly recommended off this album. Track number 5, See Yourself. Just some good lyrics. It's easier to criticize somebody else than to see yourself. It's reflecting inward. I'd probably say it's a response to critics in general. That could be music critics, that could be other people. I think according to the liner notes when I read it, George was really thinking about Paul's LSD trip. Paul admitting back in 1967, yeah, I took LSD, maybe I wouldn't encourage it, something along those lines, but kind of Paul getting roasted in the press at that point during the Sgt. Pepper era, so kind of tying all that in together. Some really nice piano work here as well in this track, so definitely a nice track. Let's see, track number 6, It's What You Value. The lyrics suggest cars. When I read the liner notes again, as the CD is actually right next to me off camera, it was about one of the session musicians, I think Jim Keltner, had bought a Mercedes or something like that and gotten that instead of payment for being on the album. And, other session musicians kind of came to George and said, yeah, we got paid, but this guy got a car. So George also had definitely a big love of cars as well. It's a theme that got to be expanded upon in the song Faster on his next album from 1979, self-titled George Harrison. This is pleasant enough, but to me this felt like the weakest song on the album. It's decent, it's just kind of unremarkable in my view. Your mileage may vary, yes, pun definitely intended, so there you go, that would be the weakest song. Even then, decent song, decent album, can't really, complain about it. Track number 7, True Love. It's just really a song originally written by Cole Porter, probably back in the 1920s or 30s. It's the shortest song on the album, lots of organ and synth on here. Again, just a nice, pleasant song, not super memorable. It's a cover song. We move on to track number 8, Pure Smokey. Now, this is written as an appreciation of Smokey Robinson. It's not quite his style, but just kind of an appreciation of him, of all he had done for music. There's some really nice synth work here. Part of the lyrics kind of reference You Really Got a Hold on Me. You Really Got a Hold on Me was a Beatles cover from the early days. It was also done in an early Beatles album. I want to say 1963 with the Beatles. I could be wrong on that, though. I may be mixing up some of the earlier albums at this point in the game, as it were. But the appreciation for it goes back years. So just a very nice tribute, to Smokey. Definitely another highly recommended track. And again, it sounds very much of its time. It's got that kind of mid-70s mellow synth vibe to it for this particular track. Now, track number 9, Crackerbox Palace. Definitely the second upbeat track of the album. It's the single off of the album as well. This was actually released in January 24th of 1977 in the US, and it made it to number 19 in the US, so it was kind of a modest, top 20 hit. Very catchy song. I'd say the obvious single on the album out of all the tracks that were recorded for this. Definitely a great video of George's on the Dark Horse set when I do get to that. A lot of the video was actually shot at Friar Park, George's home at the time. Still Olivia's home and Danny's home, Danny, George's son. Very wonderful lyrics. Probably the best known song on the album. For a lot of fans out there, even if you're more of a casual fan, you've probably heard this song. Again, you may have heard it off of the 1976 to 1989 Dark Horse CD set, the one with the blue cover. A lot of you will know what I'm talking about. Again, I will get to that in a later review as well, because that one has some single edits. That particular one doesn't have anything released from streaming, at least. That's only a LP and CD that you could find that on. But again, this is the second upbeat track on the LP. Just a really, really great track. It's more than deserved its place among George's well-known songs. So just a really great, infectious song throughout. Great lyrics. Definitely one of the highlights of the album, if not the highlight of the album, in my view. So we get to track number 10, Learning How to Love You. Again, a very wonderful synth intro to it. It was originally written for Herb Alpert to record by George, but he kind of heard the song and said, well, maybe I'll keep this one for myself. It's very much a nice mellow ballad, and again, that's kind of reflective of a lot of the album. It's got kind of a very nice mellow feel to it. A couple upbeat songs. Again, it definitely sounds of its time. Maybe a slight bit disco light, but again, definitely not a bad thing. A wonderful album to kind of have a nice beverage to, whatever that beverage might be for you, I think. So just kind of some final thoughts on the album. I think this is definitely a pick up next. I think this is a very solid middle album. I would still go with something like Cloud 9, All Things Must Pass, or even George Harrison's 1979 release, his self-titled release from that year, first above this. This is kind of more of a middle-tier album as you're getting further into your George Harrison journey. And overall, I just enjoyed listening to this again, kind of revisiting again. It's not even Dark Horse, which is not really a bad record in and of itself. This is made maybe with a slightly less hectic time in George's life, whereas Dark Horse was a little bit more hectic. He's doing the tour of the U.S., 33 and a third. It's the mid-70s, things are kind of mellowing out a little bit. And George was not really one for touring throughout a lot of his career. So I think that enabled him to kind of go into the studio. So again, a very solid middle record, middle of the road. Pick this one up after you've gotten some more of the essential George Harrison out of the way first. And that's really it. Just very nice, very entertaining. I do like the cover art. It's really cool. The liner notes are from the 2004 the CD reissue here, as I'm taking a look through right here. And just double checking the date on that. Yep, from 2004. It was part of the box set. So eventually I'll probably get to the box set, but there may not be much to review because a lot of the releases are part of that set. You do get a additional track on the CD version, Tears of the World. That was kind of a demo. That was more for the 1980, what would have been the 1980 Somewhere in England album. That's when it was released in its final form. So probably working on it, at this stage for him is sort of more of a demo at this point. But that's about it. So I just hope that everybody's enjoying these reviews. Again, just please make sure to give a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. And that's it. Next week, I'll be going ahead and taking care of a release by one Mr. Ringo Starr from roughly the same time period. So just be on the lookout for that. I hope everybody's staying safe and staying well. And until next time, bye.